Hey guys, how you doing? This is JP Saricolia coming to you once again with another episode of Age of Heroes, my podcast. In today's episode, I want to discuss some of the news that we have heard for pretty much since yesterday. There was a new reveal from Marvel Comics in regards to some events that are coming next year. Of course, for those that are familiar with comic book stories or comic books in general, Marvel every year, pretty much every summer, there is a big event what Marvel does, like pretty much a crossover stories or a big story, that kind of, go alongside different issues or different, imprints or different, comic book stories. So it goes from, different magazines, and it covers the entirety of the Marvel universe. And it's something that is traditional for Marvel. Marvel does this pretty much every year. So which is normal. We kind of got accustomed to this big events where, a lot of things happen and, lives are destroyed. Some people are revived, some people are killed. New storylines, threads to different storylines for the future. So everything kind of changes. The funny thing about this one, though, every year is something big, nothing major that really changes the landscape of comics. It's just a big event that doesn't last long, changes maybe, make some changes to the storyline, and all of a sudden everything goes back to the status quo. Everything goes back to normal. If you read comics, if you're into comics, you are familiar with this process, which Marvel follows through, and even DC, but Marvel has done it traditionally every year. And it seems that now Marvel is more traditionalist in comparison to DC, which was all the way around before. But that's not the theme of this episode today. We can discuss that in another episode in the future. But the title of this one it really struck me. It says Marvel History is Destroyed. And of course, they have 4 teaser posters for this, and this supposedly is coming out in March. We will know more about it. They say that we're going to have probably more stories or more teasers before we get to there. So you have first we have a poster which is for Who Found Captain America on the Ice Before the Avengers. That was one. There was one for the Dark Phoenix. Who Saved Jean Grey from Dark Phoenix. And there was another one that says, Who Brought the Amazing Spider-Man Back After Spider-Man No More? Of course, the classic storyline. And also, who really gave the Fantastic Four their powers? And that's the ones we have so far. Probably there's more somewhere else. I couldn't find them. I couldn't see anything else. And of course, at the bottom it says Marvel History is Destroyed, March 2019. So we got these teasers. And of course, as always, there is controversy. Of course, all this type of storylines, all these teasers and everything that happens, everything that is shown to us before this come to us, of course, is going to be controversy among comic book fans. As you know, comic book fans are some of the most, I wouldn't say toughest crowd, but definitely they are up there, when it comes about, and that includes also, you can talk about Star Wars fans. I think Star Wars fans are could be the most toxic of all, but I think they're followed up by comic book fans, which, I'm a part of the community, of both communities. So I really love this, two big universes that are now under the banner of Disney. But, of course, I know the toxicity in this community can be hard, can be tough. But, in regards to what about this, it made me think about a lot of things. I was thinking about it. What is it the Marvel is trying to plan? And it really, at the end of it, I really came to the conclusion, as usual, that the problem with Marvel and the problem with comics in general is this idea that you have to have big events, every year or every couple of months. You have to have this huge event where everything happens and there's a revolution going on and there's everything going crazy and all the characters going crazy, and all of a sudden the storm subsides until next season, until the next event comes. And sometimes one event is just pretty much the mezzanine, or just the introduction to the next big event. So you go from one big event to another big event to another big event, and nonstop. And it's a constant, I would say, a trick that Marvel Comics or any of these companies create just to keep you busy, just to keep you buying more comic book stories. And primarily, we're talking about Marvel and DC as companies that they have done this for years and years and years and years. It gets to the point where it's tiresome. It is tiresome to constantly going from one event to the other with no real ending, with no real consequences. Because yes, someone can get killed on this event. 2 events down the road, 2 years down the road, the same character is going to be revived in another event. And it's a constant vicious cycle from story to story, from stories to story. Now, the part in this one particularly, just for what we have seen so far, we haven't really known much what's going on. It seems that it's going to be something that is going to shake the entirety of the Marvel Universe. It's going to change some of the reasons, some of the facts of some of the very well-known, events or happenings or whatever in regards to these characters, things that have really shaped these characters for years, for generations. Who gave the Fantastic Four their powers? And some people are speculating that maybe they're trying to create there was a mastermind behind these events that created all the situations, which it's kind of cool idea, kind of like a cool concept, but not necessarily so. There's something that we have to go back to, pretty much to the beginning of the characters. We have to understand these characters and their creation. We have to understand what was the reason that created these characters. If you change that algorithm, and I mean, we're going a little bit mathematical here, but it's not about numbers. If you change that, the reason why people fell in love with the characters in the first place, if you change some of those aspects of their stories, that can also affect and change the reasons behind and their motives they have to be who they are. And you have to be very, very careful to get into this deep waters where you're changing the story just to assimilate to a cause, assimilate to to try to bring the stories to accommodate them into the modern day, conversation of things. You have to be very, very careful. Because if you do that, you run the risk. You're risking the possibility of changing in this case, the core elements that make these characters great by transforming them into something they're not. And I feel that this is the part where Marvel has to be very, very careful. Yes, I understand that they need to keep magazines in circulation. They need to keep selling these comic book stories. And they have to do whatever they have to do in order to, steer that attention. But you have to be very careful. Now, on the other hand, I was thinking too this morning that, a couple of months back, and if you follow this podcast, and of course you follow my YouTube channel, if you follow in regards to comic book stories, I have a video in my YouTube channel when I talk about the possibility of John Byrne coming back to Marvel. And also, I talk on one of my initial episodes of this podcast in regards to it as well, where there is a possibility that he can come back. And there was in that conversation, if you remember, or if you not, I have the link so you can listen to the podcast or watch the video. John Byrne mentioned that he would like to come back if it's given the chance to redo things for the X-Men, particularly the Dark Phoenix story, because he was never happy with it. So when thinking about this, going through the news yesterday and remembering what was said then, and the possibility that if he said I can go back, I will go back if I'm given the opportunity to kind of rewrite the story, maybe in an Elseworld story. So that made me think about it kind of struck the light bulb in me, and I said, wait a minute, is it John Byrne coming back to the Marvel to rewrite some stories? Maybe not as an event, but maybe as Elseworld story. And I know that Cebulski, he was talking about that he would like to have him working with it, not in the sense of Elseworld stories, but working pretty much on stories for them, for Marvel. And he will be, glad to do those things. So thinking about those things, that made me think and ask the question to myself, is this a sign that maybe some of these writers are coming back? Maybe John Byrne is coming back to do some work. Maybe that's the event they're pointed out. I don't know. This is speculation from my part, but it would be great. If he's coming back, I will be all for it, for a new old story or Elseworld story, because I believe that if there's a writer that understands this characters well, it's John Byrne. Because, he understands the character. Chris Claremont, John Byrne, all this, right? They understand the characters well. It would be great to see them again participating, Walt Simonson, all these great artists, great writers participating in their stories again, reshaping some things that maybe they were left out and they didn't have the opportunity to finish up. I'll be more than glad to support it. Now, knowing the landscape of Marvel and the landscape of comics, that possibility is there, but the chances are not as great as they given the work to some of the more modern writers, because, that's what really sells nowadays, or what they understand that sells, because you have a fan base that nowadays is still young and they love this character. And so I'm not sure that this is actually the approach. It's just a speculation from my part, and it's just wishful thinking. But I don't know. It feels that there's something is not right. And something is right on it, but something is not completely right. I'm against the fact that if they decide to change things just for just the wow factor, just to, for, kicks and giggles, just to make it this, to sell some more copies and issues. But the after effects, the aftermath can be harmful for the comic stories as a whole. So we don't know exactly what they're going to do. I'm particularly not fond of the ancient stories. And I can go back to something that I may need to discuss in a future podcast, in a future conversation, future video on YouTube, where I'm really get to the point that I feel that the problem with Marvel, the center problem, is this idea that they have to keep rehashing stories. So they keep remaking stories time and time and time and time and time again. It's a constant repetition of things, a repetition, because they assume that success comes from repetition. I'm always said this, and I'm just an avid believer of this term. Repetition doesn't equal success. You can do the same things over and over and over again and never be successful. Is creating new things that are changing everything, but they are giving you value. What makes the stories shine. I feel that one of the biggest problems with Marvel and DC and a lot of the comic book stories today, is the repetition of the same stories, the rehashing of the same stories time and time again. And you are trying to reinvent the wheel with the same characters over and over and over again. When was the last time Marvel created a new character? Yeah, you can say this character or this other character, but they're just kind of secondary in comparison to the big characters. And yes, people want to see more Captain America. People want to see more Wolverine. People want to see Spider-Man. They want to see those characters more and more and more. But why? They want to see that because they're larger than life. Because were created from the get-go, from the beginning, with the core elements that people love, that people care about. And of course, that expand. But you have seen more modern characters like Deadpool, which people love. Venom. People love Venom. And you can see how powerful they have become. They were cheesy in the beginning, but they have become more than what they were meant to be, because people have injected on them, the writers injected good stories and good core values, or good elements that really people care about. And I feel that this is the thing where right now with Marvel needs to do, or DC or anybody else. If you want to be more successful and sell more copies, don't create all these stupid events. Don't try to throw everything out even the sink out of the window, and try to do all of those things that are not meant to last forever. Create stories that last for a lifetime. Characters that people care about. Build those characters, create those characters. And I feel that this is the thing. I'm tired of reading the same story over and over and over and over again. That makes a lot of old comic book fans like myself just go back to the same old stories. We just go back to reread the things that we read when we were kids, because nothing that is new is sticking. It's sticking out. Nothing that is new is really making a difference for these characters. It's just changing the conversation. It's changing those elements that make these characters great. Give me something that really has value. Create a character that I care about, and if you create those characters and you create those stories, you have money in your hands. You have gold in your hands. This is what Marvel needs to learn, in my opinion. And this is what will change the way, the comic book sales are going, and the direction they're going right now. Because they're losing money. They're going down and down and down. And the only reason these franchises are still alive is because the movies are out there and people want to know more about this character, so they go back to buy comic book stories. But it shouldn't be that way. It should be that the people love the comic book characters and they love the comic book stories, so they go and watch their movies. But we live in a different world now, and everything has to be directed. And now, the movies are directing the direction, are just pointing the direction, are the ones actually shaping the stories in the comic books, that it shouldn't be that way. It should be the other way around. And I think that's the biggest problem and one of the biggest flaws that we have. And it has nothing to do with the movies. Cannot blame the movies. We cannot blame their success of the movies. We have to blame, in this case, the editors and the people at Marvel, because they haven't done what really makes people go back to comics. They haven't done what necessary for these stories to survive. Well, this is just definitely, of course, my opinion, and this is based on my experience as a comic book reader. I don't work for the industry, so I don't know exactly what goes into it, what entails for them to do what they do. But I feel that if we are able to get to that place where we bring that balance, you're going to have more people get into comics, whether it's digital, whether it's physical, because we understand that, and I have talked about this before, physical is no longer what it used to be, and it's not the way to go. So go digital, but create those stories that matter and that impact people, impact readers to the point that they feel more compelled to get into more stories. Create characters that really matter. Characters that really have a story to tell. How is it that back in the 70s or, even the 80s, many characters were created from Marvel in the time that they needed stories, so they created characters and after character. Some didn't stick, some didn't last long, but they have shaped the Marvel universe. Do the same thing again. Do it. Just create some characters that really has a lasting effect, and you will see how this will shape into much better stories in the future. Rehashing the stories is not cutting it anymore. We have to do something better. We have to get new stuff. If not, people are going to keep moving away into other type of entertainments where they feel that the stories are met and they feel that they have something new, something fresh, where they can feel compelled to stay. Well, this is just my opinion, of course. What do you think about this? Are you excited about this news, about what is coming? Are you tired of the way the industry is handling this? Are you tired of all of these big events with Marvel? Or you have high hopes of this? Do you think that this is the comeback for John Byrne? Or do you think this is just another cash grab, like many others, like every year from Marvel? Just share your thoughts below. I would like to hear them. So once again, thanks for listening to this podcast. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share the podcast with your friends. Take it anywhere. You can download the app. You can download it through iTunes, Stitcher, and any other app. And please consider supporting this channel. Any financial support through my Patreon account will build this channel, will build this podcast to have more and much better content. So once again, thank you and God bless you. I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.